weakness in recent housing data, the spring real estate market in southwestern Connecticut, it always is somewhat competitive. So as future buyers and sellers get ready for the upcoming season, what should they do to get the most for their money? Well, let's turn to the expertise of a 25-year veteran of the area's commercial and residential real estate markets, Jim Randel. Mr. Randel is a real estate attorney. He's a broker, investor, and owner of Rand Real Estate in Westport. He is also an author. His brand new book is Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur. Nice to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
All right, Jim, you've been working this area 25 years. What are you seeing in the real estate market, the residential real estate market in particular, right now?
Well, as you know, numbers just came out yesterday, and residential housing sales are a bit down from what they were in November. November was down from what they were in October. So the trend is flattening or decreasing sales numbers. Prices are staying relatively flat. There's not the continuing increases. And hopefully the spring market will bring out a new demand and the numbers will perk back up.
Yeah, your book is primarily for people who wanted to make the jump into commercial real estate, but many of the same principles apply.
Yes.
And part of those, some of those principles have to do with kind of being ready for the deal. And what can homeowners, either a buyer or a seller, do right now, right before the market kind of pops?
Well, from the seller's point of view, if I were advising a seller, I'd recommend to price the house properly. Talk to a couple real estate agents, get a sense of where the market is, and don't push it. In my view, it's not the right time to push the price.
So price it right.
Price it right, and there are a lot of good real estate agents who can advise people about that. On the buyer's side, I'm a big believer in educating oneself. I don't believe in turning your financial life over to an attorney or a real estate agent, a mortgage broker. Learn a little bit about the principles of buying, learn a little bit about what a closing is, the different types of mortgages. There's a whole slew of different type of mortgage products. One of the themes of my book is learn. This isn't brain surgery. Anybody can learn a bit, and your financial future can be better by learning.
Yeah, and one thing you do talk about in the book is staying ahead of the pack. It seems so difficult to do in Fairfield County, kind of get word on a deal or a house that's coming on the market before it actually hits the market, so you can kind of beat the competition. How do you do that, stay ahead of the pack?
Well, the principle there is, again, relative to commercial real estate. Buy where people hopefully will be buying 3 and 5 years from now. So in Fairfield County, which is such a mature market, it's very, very hard to do. In the commercial world, I talk about buying at the edges of an urban area, for example, which is perhaps not in the best state, but will be 2-3 years down the road, and hopefully buying ahead of what you believe to be increased demand.
What about buying a home but having contingencies? How does that jeopardize, or maybe it doesn't at all, the deal?
Well, it shouldn't. The common contingency, of course, the mortgage contingency, and people, this is an example, people don't always understand what a contingency is. Basically, it's an event that must occur for one of the parties to a contract's obligation to arise. So a mortgage contingency, if the buyer doesn't get the mortgage, that being the event, the buyer's obligation to buy does not arise. There are other types of contingencies. One that's common sometimes is what's commonly called a Hubbard clause, which is I've got a house to sell. I want to buy your house, but I don't want to be obligated to buy it unless I get a contract on my house first. So the contingency there, the event being a contract on my house, gives rise to my obligation to buy. If I don't get a contract on my house, I don't have to buy your house. Some sellers won't agree to that, some will.
Should buyers feel pressured, because oftentimes you'll go into a deal and you'll hear, okay, well, instead of taking 30 days to go to contract or 2 weeks, we're going to go to contract in 3 days. It puts a lot of pressure on a buyer.
Yeah, and I don't like when real estate agents do that, but at times they do it, and sometimes they have to do it because there may be competing buyers. That's another example where you could use a contingency. You could go to contract quickly, but have an inspection contingency, so they had the right to do a building inspection, a radon inspection, septic, whatever you wanted to do. Sometimes you have to move quickly to get a good price.
And prices in Fairfield County have escalated to such heights. I mean, we were talking before we did this interview about the multi-million-dollar homes.
Right.
What about negotiating with your broker in terms of their percentage of what you're going to pay them? I mean, do people do that now?
Oh, they do it all the time. Generally, the seller does it.
Right.
And if you're selling a multi-million-dollar house, guarantee you're negotiating with your real estate agent, real estate company in terms of the percentage you're going to pay. Obviously, it declines as the price of the house goes up.
Yeah, because some people are so polite, they say, okay, well, 5% is what they get, and that's what we're going to have to pay.
Not that many polite people. People understand that this is negotiable. Right.
And what about taking on risk? You talk about it in the book. There are so many, as you said a moment ago, so many different mortgage vehicles that are out there.
Right.
But people now, it was a time when people were putting 20% down. I think the average now is about 5%. What do you advise to offset risk, not to get yourself too deep?
Well, I was interviewed the other day on a radio show, and the interviewer made a good point, and he or she said, listen, if you believe that your earning power is going to go up, and the only way you can get into a house is to take a 90 or 95% loan, well, then nobody should really tell you don't do that.
Okay.
It's the person perhaps who's got flat earning trajectory, or they live from commission to commission, who has to be careful about these over-leveraged situations. They can get in trouble.
Jim Randel, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur. That's all this week on 12 on the Money. We'll see you again next week. I'm Rebecca Saran.